Two. Good day, fellow deal makers. Welcome to the Deal Scout. On today's show, we're going to talk about the manufacturing industry, buying and selling family businesses, and some other cool things. So, on today's show, we're going to have Mr. Rhett. Rhett, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. So, let's start with this. Where in the world are you guys located?
Well, our family office is located in the beautiful Mobile Bay region of South Alabama.
Cool. South Alabama. You kind of have that South Alabama accent going. Is that where you're originally from?
Well, I'm originally from North Florida, which is where I got the accent, but I'm nowhere near as bad a Southern accent as some of my friends and partners.
Right. Okay. So, Mr. Rhett, you have such a cool name. It's spelled Rhett, but you pronounce it Rhett, right? What where'd you get that name from? We were kind of discussing this prior to the interview.
Well, my mom was a big fan of the movie Gone with the Wind. It was right. I was born right around the time that it was big, and so I got stuck with the name Rhett. And now, as I'm older, it's really cool. When I was young, I was the only Rhett out there, so it made it odd. But I love the name.
Yeah. What nicknames? I know we're going to talk about deals and acquisitions, but a lot of these times, my job as podcast host, after doing this 1,000 times, is to ask the questions that come straight to my head. What names did people call you? Endearing or playful? Like, did they come across with Rhett? Because I have a boring name, Josh. Right? It's Josh Squash and other things. What did people call you?
Well, when you have a name like Rhett, I mean, it's cool enough that I didn't get many nicknames.
Nice.
The only nickname I got was playing rugby in college, and that's not one I'm going to publish ever. Um,
I get it. Understood.
yeah,
All right, so you're a rugby player, huh?
I used to be. Yeah.
That's pretty tough job. I was a wrestler, but
Oh yeah.
rugby is like wrestling and football mixed.
Yeah, and running nonstop. I mean, it's a great sport. Um, I mean, I grew up in the South. Football was king, but I was a little bit too small to play football into late high school and stuff. So when I got to college, a bunch of buddies introduced me to rugby, and I played 4+ years and had the best time of my life.
Super
Um,
cool.
yeah, rugby is that sport where they say it's important to win on the field, but it's even more important to win the party after.
Hit the pub afterwards and make sure that you destroy it there.
Yep.
Cool. So all right. So give us an idea of some of the things that you focus on today. So you mentioned your family office is in South Alabama in the Bay Area there, and that you guys are in the manufacturing space. But you and I are having coffee, and someone comes up and they go, "Hey, Rhett, nice to meet you. What the heck do you do?"
I spend most of my time looking for deals, looking for businesses. Well, let me rephrase it. I spend a fair amount of my time doing that, but even bigger, I spend a lot of time thinking about the strategy of what we want to do. How do you want to expand what you have? How do you fit pieces of the puzzle together to build a nice portfolio that keeps people gainfully employed, happy and enjoyable in their job, but also helps the investors get the return on investment that they want.
Got it.
So I take a lot of time doing that, and a lot of it revolves around the fact that even before COVID, even before all of the gyrations with the current troubles in the world, the supply chain was starting to change. I've been in deep manufacturing for 20 years, and I kind of sensed what was going on and saw the opportunity that said it's going to start expanding in North America again for a variety of reasons.
Why did you? All right. So, if you look on the back of anything made in China, right? COVID happens, supply chain falls apart, right? A lot of challenges, lots of stuff on ships, lots of stuff, like not making it to the end users, right? So the supply chain is disrupted. Like, and you said when you were in the industry for 20 years in manufacturing, you saw a gap. You saw a gap, and you're saying, I think it's going to become more U.S. based. What did you see? Let us into, like what you saw that I might have missed?
Okay. Well, I had the luxury for the last decade of my career running a North American manufacturing firm owned by a major Chinese state-owned entity. So I spent a fair amount of time in China. And even before that, I had been involved in sourcing some stuff from China and elsewhere. And you could see two things happening. So the first thing, when I went to China when I went to China my first round, 20 plus years ago, it was very much about cheap stuff. Chinese labor was cheap. There was tons of it. If the company you were working with wasn't low cost enough, you could find any number that could bring the cost down. And transportation was cheap and not considered a problem. Now, when I was in my second round this last decade, it was predominantly in the aerospace sector. And I went on this 2-week whirlwind tour of manufacturing divisions of AVIC, which was my parent company. They've been in the good news in a good way and a bad way lately, but we'll leave that to a different day. But I got to go see a factory that was making major components for GE commercial jet engines, Rolls-Royce jet engines, and others. And the interesting thing to me was, yes, if I looked at the machine operator, he was probably getting paid, let's say, a third to 40% of what a US machine operator would get paid. But the difference was, where in the US you'd see the machine operator getting paid a lot more, but he owned the machine, the quality, the flow, the programming, and a bunch of other stuff. In China, what you saw was each machine had an operator, a programmer, and a quality engineer on it. So even though each of those was making a third to 40% of what a US person, net cost was the same. Mm-hmm. So you could see that transition off of cheap labor going away in China. And indeed, when you listen to some of the things that were happening in China in the last 3-4 years, you started to hear labor tightness, cost increases, et cetera, et cetera. So I saw that. Then the other side, and this is not a political statement, it's just looking at the facts as somebody that loves to talk about strategy, you start to hear the environmental ESG and everything, and you start to say shipping stuff from China, from Vietnam, anywhere in Asia, Eastern Europe, et cetera, et cetera. You're talking about trucking, you're talking about ships, or you're talking about flying it. Now we're talking about cutting the carbon emissions and all of those things. So what that means is cost of shipping is going up. Mm-hmm. Take these two together and you start to say the supply chain is going to start coming back closer to where the product is needed, because the cost paradigm that drove globalization in the supply chain is going to start shifting. COVID and the current crises have just accelerated that fact.
Yeah.
So that's where, when I left industry a couple of years ago, I said, here's where we can get ahead of this. And that's what I and my partner started looking at.
Okay. So let's talk about, I have so many questions in terms of what you saw right there, but let's bring it to what COVID and current crisis. You said it accelerated what you saw. You had a hypothesis on, we think things are going to move towards more made in the US, made in North America, right? Like this is your hypothesis. So you said, we need to get ahead of this. Crisis accelerated that, right? And we've all seen it, gas prices and COVID and, international issues. How did you get ahead of it, and what did you guys do?
Well, we didn't get ahead of it as fast as I would have liked, but we started looking to acquire, some small manufacturing firms in North America. We said we can go and create that foundational company, and we had our vision of what we wanted to get. We're focused on aerospace and defense because that's what I and one of my other partners spent most of our career doing. It's a good, solid market. Carries decent margins, requires higher quality and everything else. So, you're lower risk of commoditizing.
Yeah.
We got out there and started looking for those manufacturers. I started that search in 2019. Even within COVID, we kept that search going. Deal flow almost came to a stop, but it was still there. I in Q2, no real trips in Q1, but in Q2, there was enough latitude to go visit places or do that. So started all of that search, and we went through a number of evaluations until in Q4 of 2020, we found a nicely diversified, what we consider a portfolio company that we can bolt on, add to in the Northeast region of the United States. And we leapt on that, closed the deal in early Q2 of 2021 and have been rock and rolling ever since.
Yeah. So you said you left the industry a few years ago. You and a few partners decided to stand up something to get ahead of this movement of manufacturing, right?
Yep.
Now, how did you decide on the structure of what you guys created? How did you guys set your sail of going? We're gonna acquire family-owned manufacturing firms, focus on aerospace and defense, right? Why not anything else? Why not become a barber, right? Like, why did you guys choose that?
Well, unfortunately, I actually own some beauty salons, so
Okay.
um,
Understood.
I can't. But I love manufacturing. I mean, it's when you look at what can be done and what's modernized the world,
Mhm.
um, it's a great thing, and it's not going to go away. It's going to change, whether it's through 3D printing, improved. Uh, I'm going to say metallurgy, but that's not the exact term I want. But um, the term's eluding me, but basically the ability to manipulate raw components, whether it's plastics,
Yeah.
whether it's metals or any other raw material, is just changing the world. You add to that the amount of computing power and technical capabilities that are coming out. What we can manufacture today is dramatically different than what could be manufactured even 20 years ago.
Yeah.
That's just taking the world to new places. So it's a lot of fun. And the reality is, you can't run the internet without manufacturing. You can't create all this social media stuff without manufacturing. It just doesn't work. We can't grow all the food we need to do and all the other stuff. So it's kind of one of those core precursors. And it's important to me to see it really rebuild what the United States had when it was the manufacturer of the world post World War II. We should have never given that up.
Yeah.
Changed a lot of the dichotomies in the world. And you see coming out of San Francisco with social media and all, well, social media is not right, but all of that tech industry that's come out and taken the world by storm. What's happening everywhere else is copycat. We need to get back to there and manufacture.
Yeah. Made in the USA, right? Made in the States. Now, why aerospace and defense? Now, I think it's brilliant, right? You guys could print pens all day long, right? But like you said, if we go after things that have higher quality, we lower the risk of commoditizing, right? Not anybody
Yeah,
could just stand up a plant that does aerospace and defense, right? It's a niche.
yeah.
But like, why did you guys choose aerospace and defense?
Well, when you talk about commoditizing, you get into certain industries, and it's a dog eat dog race to the bottom.
Yeah.
You've got to sign up for a 3% per minimum cost reduction every year, regardless of what happens with any core pricing, whether it's labor, whether it's material. And you think about it, to be good to your team, you need to help them grow, increase their salary every year. So you're naturally, if you're trying to bring 3% total cost reduction, but you have to increase labor 3% each year, you're fighting for a 6% reduction just to stay even.
Yeah.
The unfortunate thing is, and I see that because people bring me trade flow where you look at a company and they got into that commodity, it's, make it up in volume and you don't. But you're looking at it going, you can't save this company. You can't save it because half the contracts you have, you just have to walk away from.
Mm.
And so that's where you lose that battle. So aerospace and defense has a higher level because of the safety component. So I'm a pilot. It took me a long time to understand this. Well, it actually didn't. But, you know, your car breaks down, you get a flat tire, you just pull over to the side of the road. If something goes wrong when you're at 10,000 feet, there's only one direction you get to go,
Hmm.
and it's
Down.
down.
Fast.
So when you think about that, you go, I don't want to, I don't want to compromise quality. I don't want to compromise safety. That comes with a price, and most people recognize that. Now, that doesn't mean that we need to be obscenely or punitively profitable, but it means we need to get paid enough to stay on the cutting edge, maintain the systems, ensure the safety, train our team, make sure our suppliers are doing what they're supposed to do, that we can deliver a product that you want to get behind.
Yeah, I'm gonna completely throw the worst example out there ever. I may shop for cheap garbage bags, but if I need open heart surgery, I'm not gonna do a Yelp review searching for the lowest price cardiologist. So similar thing for aerospace and defense. It's not about cheap. It has to be highest quality. It has to be above grade all the way because at 10,000 feet, especially if you have passengers or chemicals or this or that or whatever, crap's got to work right, right?
Exactly. And the way I look at it, and I always told this to people, I fly with my family. They're in the sea. If I kill myself, that's 100% on me. I guess I can, quote unquote, live with it. I don't want to be on that last second going, I just killed my family because I didn't want to buy good oil, or I didn't want to get the maintenance done, or,
Right.
I wanted to stretch the engine a little bit beyond its life. None of that is what you want to think about. And your heart surgeon example is a perfect example. You're right.
Yeah. What do you fly? Your pilot. What kind of
I fly small piston powered aircraft.
okay.
So when you think about it, Cessna, I fly right now. I'm flying a Cessna 182.
Yeah.
I used to fly a Cirrus SR-22, which is a great airplane. So is the Cessna.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
but
my business partner, his wife flies choppers, right? She flies Blackhawks in the military, and then I have some
oh,
buddies.
really?
Yeah, I have some buddies who fly. They have some Hueys, some Blackhawks. So I have buddies who fly what they call it, rotor versus fixed wing, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
But my
Yeah.
dad used to be a pilot, and he flew Cessnas. So
Okay.
I used to fly with him Cessnas, little. I think they were 2 to 4 seaters or something. I was like 8 years old or 9 years old.
Yeah.
So that's what you fly.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. What's the farthest you've flown?
Uh, Without stopping in a Cirrus, I did about 4.5 hours, which when you can't get up and move and go to the
Yeah.
restroom, that's a good thing. But that was, you can do a good 800 mile. I mean, this plane flies close to 200 knots, so you're going to do 800 miles in 4 hours.
Yeah. And
Um,
for those listening, Cessnas don't have bathrooms, right? They don't have like you could get up and use the restroom, right?
yeah,
There's other unique ways, but
yeah,
so you have to
none that I want to do, but
you have to do your travel based around potty breaks. Is
yeah.
that why? Now you said you bring your family. Tell me about your family.
So I have 3 children plus my wife, 2 dogs. So my daughter is now in the business world, working down in South Florida. My middle son's in college in Gainesville,
Go
and
Gators.
my youngest is doing a little stint at a school in North Alabama. So a plane is a perfect tool to get to any of those places. I mean, my wife's Mr. Kids, and I've done the fly in Sunday morning, have pizza, fly
Oh,
home Sunday afternoon gig. But it takes what's a 6 hour car ride down to an hour and a half.
yeah.
Um,
Super
and,
cool.
and that's nice. But the other thing is, it's a great business tool. So all of these businesses that I looked at, I and my partner looked at, jump in a plane. You don't have to rely on the commercial airlines.
Mhm.
When you add all the time up and or the cost, quite often it's cheaper to take the small plane than it is to get in and fly commercial. And so it's a great business tool as well as a great personal tool.
And your wife trusts you to fly with you?
She does.
There was a pause there. I felt the pause.
Well, it was interesting the first times that she got in, that she gets in, puts her headset on, gets her book out and reads that or naps. She
Yeah.
doesn't want to know what's going on at any, because it's funny. You get in and you give them a pre-flight briefing. So it's kind of just like the stewardess getting up there. The difference is, and this was the nice thing in the Cirrus,
Yeah.
because the Cirrus has a parachute,
Yep.
is, okay, if for some reason something happens to me, pull this lever, push this button and call air traffic control and tell them you just popped a chute.
Yeah.
And she's like, I don't want to do that. And I said, well, if I black out, this gets you on the ground safely.
Yeah.
But that's a scary proposition the first time you hear it.
Sure. Now, from going from Cirrus to Cessna, was your wife a little concerned? So she's like, all right, the Cessna doesn't have a chute, but the Cirrus did.
No, because we'd been flying for so long by then, it just, she was just used to it, and it was there.
Okay.
And knock on wood, the Cessna is a very safe plane. It's, very docile. The difference was with the Cirrus, it's a little bit weight limited. The Cessna, so when you're trying to pour a big boy and two dogs and a wife in the plane to go somewhere, the Cessna was a little bit better for it, kind of thing.
Sure. Yeah. All right. So sorry about that. Back to deals. So as you guys are, why did you set up the structure as a family office? You say you have, you and a few partners. Why did you set it up as family office versus you want to get in and operate? Like, kind of give me your thinking on that.
Well, part of it is I've worked for enough corporations in my life, and I loved it, and I learned a lot from each boss and team that I worked with. So none of it was bad. But at some point, you say, I want to realize the value for myself. So, finding a deal and going and matching it to a PE firm, and you getting that finder operator amount, but you're still beholden, was not the path I really wanted. I've been blessed to build some great relationships with some great people. And so the two partners that I pulled together are people I've known for a while. One for more than 20 years. The other one, we did a really big deal recently that stood him really well. He wanted to diversify. So we looked at it and said, ultimately, we'd like to create more of a non-family office structure. But we said we want to start out, get everything going. Then we can look at creating a fund, bringing in more typical, but we're going to be the PE firm and the leaders of that, even if we start bringing in an investor fund structure.
Got it. So part of your growth strategy is start kind of like a family-ish office style, do our own investments. As we find some bigger deals and more opportunity, then we might step into a fund relationship where maybe we raise some capitals, bring some LPs. Is that what I hear?
Exactly. And all that goes back to my love of looking at strategy. And so that was it. Build the credibility, create the structure, find a good foundational business that gives you the ability to bolt on, grow organically, expand geographically. So all of that was in there. Take that time over a couple of years, get the track record, start establishing, and we had in our first acquisition, we had a nice round. We had some pref partners that came in. We were able to equity them out in the first 9 months. They loved it. They're standing forward to be ready when we're ready to go next. So all of that was there as that strategy. The gap that we're doing is to establish the strategy and the expansion in the foundational business, which, because of its scope of business, we're able to take it far afield. And that's what we've used the past year to do. So we're looking at that next stage probably is 9 to 12 months out.
So, how do you guys currently find deals? The show's called The Deal Scout. We talk to deal makers, we talk about deals. One of my favorite things is the hunt. How do you guys find deals?
Well, that's kind of my bailiwick. It's,
Bailiwick?
actually
Hold on a second. What the heck is a bailiwick?
just kind of a term that says something that I'm good at,
Okay.
what I like to do.
Okay, got it. All right. So that's your bailiwick. That could be the
Yeah.
title of the show. What's your bailiwick? All right. So, sorry, man. I had to stop you there. All right. So
No,
you're
that's
the
all right.
hunter.
So, and I was actually talking to somebody that reached out to me yesterday asking the same question. And I said, this is really just where you get down and you turn up your sleeves. There's so much opportunity out there. So part of it is leverage network.
Yeah.
So first thing I did, and it depends upon deal size that you want to pursue. So I reached out to my network and said, I'm starting to do this if something comes along. And I reached out to, I reached out to some of the big corporations I've done business with.
Yeah.
If there's something you want to divest, call me. I mean, we have money, we have the capacity. We can't go take a $500 million deal, but you'd be amazed at what companies start to think of as non-core. And so there are sometimes nice deals. So you start with your network. Number two, the internet today is a magical thing.
Totally.
You can plug in so many different search terms and just get out there. And depending upon what you're looking for in the lower middle market, you just start making connection with brokers at different levels and investment bankers.
Mm-hmm.
Their job is to drive deal flow. They will talk to you. Part of it is just getting out there and doing stuff like this. It's amazing, and different things I've done, different sessions I've done for local incubators. People approach me offline. Then, there are aggregators. DealStream is a decent aggregator. I've seen some stuff on there. And then Axial. I don't know if you're familiar with Axial.
Yep.
I mean, it's a sell side cost to you, but if you've got money and you need to place it fast, it's a great resource. I've been able to find deals, not saying I wanted those deals, but I've found deals anywhere from 5 million top line all the way up to a little bit over 100 million top line that I've looked at.
Okay.
And in 2021, we dropped 3 LOIs. I'd say we looked at, in 2021, I lost count on how many I just scanned and said.
Yeah.
I asked for information on about 30.
Okay.
Dropped LOIs on 3, closed on 1.
Okay.
And we were in the hunt on a second one. We were prepared to do 2 deals, but one of them just got too rich. In 2022, we've dropped an LOI for it's a small deal, but we love where our current portfolio company, Leach Industries, is in Meadville, Pennsylvania, about an hour and a half north of Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful country, except in January and February.
Yeah, that sucks.
But absolutely wonderful, great people, skill set in that area is beautiful, level of industry in that area. Nobody else should look there, so maybe I shouldn't say anything, but we like it. And so that's where we're looking. But we've got 3 targets right now, dropped 1 LOI, but it's just looking every day.
Yeah. What's a perfect deal? So you and I are hanging out, coffee. Actually, you and I go for a flight in the Cessna. I throw on my Ray-Bans and we fly, and we come across the perfect deal. What does the perfect deal look like for you?
The perfect deal would be family based.
Mm-hmm.
Solid results, top and bottom line. Probably flat top line growth,
Mm-hmm.
just because then there's room on the valuation.
Okay.
solid management team, and that's the tough one in family-owned businesses. But again, if not, that's a valuation opportunity.
Totally.
Um,
Mm.
Go ahead.
No, well, when you say that's a great valuation opportunity, what that means is that you could buy and then you can add value and increase profitability, right? So, what other? So we mentioned management team, right? So maybe there's incongruities, or maybe there's some changes you can make there, and then you also see flat top line growth. What other things do you look for where you guys go, hey man, there's an opportunity to invest, increase profitability, and now we're smooth sailing? What, explain that of how you look at a deal.
Well, most of what we look for is on the sales side. So when you look at that flat top line growth, what we are looking for is a solid customer base
Mm-hmm.
and a what's the term I want? Pedigreed customer base. So it's great to have, if you look at somebody that's selling to just places within 5 miles of them, that's tough because you're all small businesses, cash flow and everything else. But if you've got some pedigree in there, some good tier two, tier ones, or even an OEM, that's a nice pedigree. Um, Typically, we're looking for what's the sales process. Are you just kind of harvesting? And that goes back to that flatline growth. If you're just harvesting, then there's tons of opportunity
Mm-hmm.
within the existing customer base. They probably don't know what you can do. How many divisions are you dealing with? So you can spread across there. So that's how do you get some quick hitters.
Mm-hmm.
But then also, if you look at that customer base has been relatively stagnant, we're really happy with the customers we have. Well, then, the rest of the value is bringing in synergies.
Yeah.
So one of the things we're looking at with this bolt-on is it's a totally different customer base, but they're outsourcing a bunch of stuff that we do. Now you get those, and I know everybody hates the buzzwords, but you do get synergies.
Yeah.
And access to that customer base, which means you can maybe jump that pretty quickly.
Yeah.
There are some opportunities sometimes in buying real estate. So we might look at the real estate because there might be some ways to realize some opportunities there quicker.
Yeah.
So that's a side thing. Region is very important. So, what kind of access to customers, how far away are they from customers, and that. So those are key things. The rest of it's just operational kind of due diligence and opportunities that we see.
And you've been doing it for 20 years, so you could probably see something and see the inefficiencies, right? Because a lot of times, especially in a family business, I grew up in a family business swinging hammers, right?
Yeah.
You do things because that's the way we've always done it, right? That's the way mom did it. That's the way dad did it. That's the way their dad and mom did it, right? So processes sometimes gets handed down, and sometimes there's lacking improvement in that. So you can sniff these things out. And
Yep.
China has done, China and Japan and other countries over there have done a great job at process improvements and those kind of things. So when you're looking at the deal, at a potential deal, you and I are looking at a big deal together. What is the area of expertise that you think you bring, because you have a few partners that you bring, and where do you lean on your other partners for support?
So I bring really strategy and financial analysis.
Okay.
Um, I and my other operating partner uh, bring operational and sales. So Chris Keene, my other operational partner, um, probably one of the most natural sales people I've ever met.
Cool.
And I do him a disservice by saying sales, because really it's business. And I'm not doing this because it's politically correct, but business development is different than sales.
Explain that.
So business development is all about understanding the customer's needs, the customer strategy, identifying where there might be gaps that we could fill, um, and building a relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sales is all about getting money for a widget. It's so I look at one as relationship and the other as transaction.
Interesting. Awesome.
And when I look at his ability to build a relationship that can span years and ups and downs and oopses and everything else, that's what you want. Because if you're just selling and you have an oops, you're not selling anymore, at least to that customer.
Yeah.
So he brings that. We both bring a very good skill at gauging and mentoring people and helping them grow. Philip Burton, my other partner, brings finance, deal strategy, which is separate from business strategy, and real estate.
Awesome. Awesome. Which one is your favorite partner? No, I'm just kidding. Don't answer that. All right. So a part of the show that I really enjoy is I have a deck of cards and I ask questions randomly through this. So tell me when to stop.
Okay. Stop.
This one. Given the chance, and this is my first time reading it. What would your worst enemy want tattooed on their back? On your back? This is the worst question ever. But we've got to go with it. So I'm gonna adjust it a little bit. If you and I went out, so we find this big deal, close this monster deal, and you and I are gonna go get tattoos together, what are you gonna get? That's a weird question too, isn't it?
Man, you want to talk about something that I've never thought about? I mean that's funny to me because the only thing that comes to mind is failure is not an option.
Yeah, cool. Now, when it comes to failures, right? You've been in the industry for 20 years. You guys are deal makers. You've looked at 30 deals, dropped 3 LOIs, did 1 deal. You guys dropped an LOI and you guys are looking for more deals. Let's talk about maybe some failures that happen in the industry or something that you guys have experienced. And I have to segue away from that horrible question about tattoos. I'm throwing that card away.
Yeah, no, interesting question. So, but the interesting thing for me is, so I'll put this in 2 perspectives: a going concern and then making an acquisition. So, going concern is stagnation. I see so much stagnation, even when somebody is still growing. Mm-hmm. It's just a cancer. You get comfortable with what's happening. It's all good. And because you stagnate, when something does go wrong, you're just not prepared to recover. Yeah. And so many companies have, plenty of dry powder. So they view stagnation as, okay, I'm just going to burn some dry powder, but that's lost opportunity. And we've been talking about, well, what happens if the economy goes down? Everybody's worried. We're looking at bond inversion, and that is a signal of recession. What do? I view that as a time to go on the offensive. Yeah. But you got to be prepared for that. But the other side I see, and this gets into that whole, what do you do with the transaction? Transaction requires great honesty and talking to the team. And too many people view that as, no, we're not going to change anything. The great honesty is, yes, change is coming. But, you see so many transactions get into trouble or not realize their worth because everybody wants to come in and de-scare people. Or they want to come in and so scare people that kind of the same thing happens. You get that circling of the wagons. I'm going to make my job so secure by telling everybody nothing, or I'm not going to, but it's that fine line. But changing owners, it's changed right there. The person you were looking at today. So you're using that. If I look at you every day And suddenly you're not going to be there because you sold to Joe.
Yeah.
Joe's a new face. Joe's not Josh.
No. Definitely not
So
as good looking as Josh.
there you go.
And you're
You're
saying, well,
exactly right.
yeah, but the change is inevitable, right? So especially when we talk about like comfort, and I love what you said. Like comfort could be cancerous, right? Like if you just sitting and if every day you've got your systems and processes so tight and you're on a treadmill, right? The what that could turn into is catastrophe, especially if you get too comfortable. Now, when we talk about when does comfort turn into a catastrophe or a failure? Like, what have you seen in the industry, in manufacturing, or in the world that you're in investments?
Well, I'll give an example. So in 2007, corporate world, I was asked or volunteered, take your pick on the word, um,
Yeah.
to take over a division. And everything I heard was this division is running great. The current CEO is retiring, and all of that. And I got in there, and my mandate was fundamentally figure it out, get it ready to sell.
Mm-hmm.
And I got in there, and oh my God. And so that comfort, the numbers looked great. But when you looked at it, they were shipping 60% of their monthly revenue, not in the last week of the month, but the last 3 days, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of the month. That meant bad quality because you were just shoving everything out the door in this crisis moment of 18-hour days for 3 days in a row. We had a metric that said price of nonconformance must decrease every year. So that's scrap, rework, and warranty. What did I find? I found $5 million worth of scrap, rework, and warranty sitting in a building, still on the books, waiting to be assessed, reworked, warranted, whatever. So, all the numbers looked great, but suddenly
You start peeling back the deal, you
yeah.
see
So
sticky stuff.
you look at, but the complacency was corporate was getting the numbers they wanted. The team was feeling like they were making the numbers because they were just kind of moving deck chairs around to make it all look good and feeling like it was going to go on forever.
Yeah.
Like anything, that complacency, I started peeling that onion back and reporting it up. And about 9 months in, it all started blowing up. Then the economy went down. So this 2007 and the first 8 months of 2008 were great. I got invited to board meetings, board dinners. Month 9, the invitation stopped. But I mean, and that leader was very supportive because it wasn't my issue. It was just he didn't know how much had to be fixed. We went in and did what we had to and got it fixed and turned around and sold it for a, huge, huge multiple.
Nice.
So all good, but complacency always creates that. And what I see with a lot of third and fourth generation, I mean, it's rare on the fourth generation, but I've seen a number of third, and this latest one just third and fourth. They get tired. It's hard. They don't have somebody that they can hand it off to. And so they just hit that point. And what you hope, and hope is not a plan, as my partner Chris says, but what you hope is they realize that they need to get out before they get too close to the edge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When it comes to, family businesses, I think I'm going to totally butcher this, but I was trying to do a quick research on this. I think that by the third generation of passing down wealth, like it's almost dissolved to nothing. They lost work ethic or whatever the case may be,
Yeah.
or they lost the initial drive, the intention, the purpose, the passion of it, the original team that built it and had so as you guys are buying family businesses, right? So you might be dealing with generation one, two, three, right? And you guys are looking to acquire. How do you ensure that you guys for your group can take this business and carry it and actually grow it?
Well, I mean, first off, you want to make sure that it's not been allowed to languish too much.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what you typically see is, and you see this in all small businesses, there's nothing that ever gets thrown away because you can always repurpose it, reuse it.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. You can monetize it. Yeah, you got to clean up, but you can monetize that stuff. Where you start to worry about is if it's a cluttered shop, that's okay because that's opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
If it's just become a disaster shop, you know, no maintenance, years of grime on the floor, dust and cobwebs and all that, that's a warning sign. And I recently walked into a place like that. Made nice money, but you looked at it and went, there's no way you can sell this.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to buy this. But you look at those things. So if it's cluttered, okay. If it's just a disaster, not okay. You look at, are they investing anything? So where you see things kind of, you tend to walk in and we joke, this office is from the 70s. And I kind of laugh when I took over that company in Mobile in 07. You walked in and the offices were from the 60s. And you look at that, and that's an employee morale and other stuff, but that's the owner going, I'm taking cash out. I don't need to do this. I'm happy with the way it looks. Now, as long as it's neat and clean, you go, okay, that's things that you can improve with time.
Mm-hmm.
What are the customer relationships? Are they still visiting the customers? I mean, what you don't want to find out is they haven't talked to a customer in 10 years and the customer's about to leave.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't necessarily make it a bad deal. That may just become an escrow item. If that customer does leave, then this escrow amount comes back to us because the valuation was wrong or something. So you're looking at that sort of thing. Where we see is that, and the other thing you're really looking for is that owner in the second or third generation that says, I just don't have anybody to pass it on to.
Mm-hmm.
If they're that smart, then you're okay. If
Yeah.
they've tried to pass it on and now it's in a nosedive, and somebody's trying to realize some value, you just kind of say thank you, good luck, and
Yeah. Some people do really well in turnarounds with companies that are nosediving. They get brought in to do a turnaround and such like that. But, I like seeing with the groups that I've worked with, I like seeing companies that have great opportunity and trajectory where the people are long term committed and the family members just go, it's time for our family to move on.
yeah,
Right. But, we want you to take care of, we want a strategic buyer because we just don't want a and not all private equity companies are like this, but we don't want someone who's going to come in and cut and cut, sell, and butcher the thing. So why would a company want to sell to you guys rather than another group out there?
because we have a track record, whether it's in this deal or in prior deals, we have a track record of realizing value post acquisition.
Mm-hmm.
We have a track record of providing for the team. So, and you said it there, a lot of owners really want to make sure their teams are taken care of. They've grown up, in some cases, they've grown up with members of the team and other things, and they feel loyalty to them. That's very important to us. Now, that doesn't always mean keeping everybody no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean that in a slash and burn. I just mean you give everybody a chance, tell them what the expectations are. It goes back to change and change management. I'm not Joe, I'm Josh, kind of answer. But that's an important thing to those owners. And then many of them also have a loyalty to their customers because they've been there a long time. So you approach those things and looking at these deals, and if you see that those are workable, then it probably gives opportunity to create a deal there.
All right. A few more questions as we're rounding this out. I love these conversations about, acquiring and people who are doing this to build a portfolio and to care for people, right? There's some really cool groups that we work with that they buy because they want to continue family legacy and they want to step in with their systems, processes, operational gadgets and widgets and all that other stuff. I wish Bali swag or what was that word that you said? Bali swag?
Bailiwick.
Bailiwick, right? Like some people are really good at taking something and improving it, making it better, adding value. So, you know, you and I were, we look to the future, we jump in your Cessna and we fly in the future and we're sitting there having a conversation with our future self and we go, the future self said, I made it. I did it. Like, how do we know you and I won? What does success even look like? How do you know you won?
Well, that's a very personal question, but if I talk about it for I and my partners, and this was something we discussed, we're not doing this to flip a group of companies in 5 years. Our discussion was to build a portfolio that perhaps we could hand down to or continue the firm, so to speak,
Yeah.
that could continue to do this beyond 5 years or beyond when we want to retire out. And I and my three partners are at different points in life. I'm the oldest, Chris is the next, Philip is the youngest. But in my case, in Philip's case, there's either people on Philip's team and or maybe his children who are very young, or one or two of my kids that are older that might want to roll into this and continue that legacy. So when you look at this, we're talking about trying to create a firm that will succeed over time, not just say, I'm looking for some money, I'm going to flip this in 5 years and fly off into the sunset, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Yeah.
But that's our point of success. And that's why when we looked at that strategy, we're like, come in as a family office, get it going, create the street cred in our community so that we can pull in money to create that first fund that allows us to expand rapidly and keep going from there.
Super cool. During this interview, we've talked a lot about deals, we've talked about strategy, we've talked about a lot of different types of topics around deals. But when it comes to strategy, and we started this conversation out around the arts, around movies. What movie, book, or TV show do you really love that has a lot of strategy in it?
Oh man, I should have gone back and looked at that. Well, I'm not going to say movie. I'm going to say sports and football.
Yeah, go for it.
So it's all of that pre-gaming and how you look at what these coaches do. And so I'm a Gator. So I look at what Steve Spurrier did over the years. I'm watching our new coach with the strategy of the way he came in. He's got these 8 steps. Mm-hmm. But you look at it and, pre-gaming is hugely important. How do I deal? So you look at this, there's a couple of things that apply to the business world. Number one, how do I develop my team? That's a long-term strategy that has nothing to do with weekly games. So I want to create this kind of program. I want to create this kind of team. I want to bring these kind of people in. I want to mentor and grow them in this way. That's long-term. Then you look at it and you go, okay, this week I'm playing Alabama. Alabama is this kind of team. They run this kind of offense. They run this kind of defense. How do I lay out my tactics to deal with that specific game? That's how do I go deal with a specific customer and business development with them. Mm-hmm. So you look at all of that, and then all of that applies week in and week out and how you do that stuff. So that's part of what I enjoy. Now, if you want to take that to a book, I'm a science fiction guy. So, and Dune was a seminal book when I was growing up. But you look at that, and if you look at the arc of that, it involved, developing strategies related to, somebody that hated somebody else and how he was going to overthrow them. And you think about what that does. And not the negative side of that, but you just think about how do you plan all that and deal with it and think about what they think. So I take a lot of that stuff and then read, a variety of books as everybody does.
Cool. What questions should I have asked you in this interview that I completely screwed up and did not ask you?
Why or what motivates me?
Hey, Rhett, what motivates you? Like as we're building this, we're doing deals and getting on podcast shows, making money and flying all over and hanging out with the kids. What motivates you? Why are you doing this?
Uh, Believe it or not, it's not the money. Um, I love, for as big an introvert as I am, and I really am, um, I love talking to people. I love helping people. I love mentoring people. Um, that's my passion. Now, every night when I finish this, I'm exhausted and I shut down. So my wife asked me why I won't talk to her. I'm just like, I'm done. But I mean, it's a real joy to do these sorts of things. The gentleman that reached out to me and we finally connected yesterday, he's trying to do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to figure, how do I start it? What do I do? What does it mean? What do I consider? And that for me is the fun of all of this, and seeing people succeed. One of my greatest points of happiness, because I can't find the right word, was when I got offered the position to come down to Mobile and take over Continental Motors. The greatest joy in my life was to be able to say, this young gentleman can take over where I'm leaving, and not only not miss a step, but take it to greater heights than I could ever take it. Mm-hmm. And that's a great feeling to be in, because you can see, and that person did exactly that. So that for me is the fun and joy. And I've been able a few times throughout my career to see people leap or come out of that and go on to great things. And that's where the fun is for me.
Yeah, super cool. For deal makers out there who want to connect with you, they have a cool pocket deal that they want to share with you. It's in manufacturing and aerospace and defense. Happens to be here in the U.S. Right around the block from you, and they want to do a deal with you. What's a good way for fellow deal makers to connect with you and do a deal?
They can come through LinkedIn. I'm active on there, not as active as I should be, but I check that regularly and I respond. If they come through you, you're welcome to give them my email at rross.tbg@outlook.com. I mean, I'm good. I don't want to get every Tom and Dick and Harry thing. Like everybody else, we have minimums. So, we're looking at 2.5 EBITDA plus,
okay.
And strategically core. No, I'd love to see deals. And I'm also happy if people want to ask questions. I mean, I just have fun with this.
Sounds good. Well, I appreciate you being on the show. A lot of fun. I'm also a fellow Gator, so go Gators
really?
out there. Yeah. We live in Ocala, right around the block from.
I didn't realize that. Sweet.
Yeah, so
I'll be there this weekend.
Well, we should. Actually, I'm on kid duty, but if we meet on a time where I'm not babysitting my kids, maybe we'll grab a coffee or something like that. I like coffee. There's
absolutely.
So, quick story. In between Ocala and Gainesville, there's a place called Ocala Highline. So when I was going through college and high school and such, we would drive to Gainesville and we'd party in Gainesville, but we'd make a pit stop at Ocala Highline. And at Ocala Highline, they had, at the time, quarter hot dogs and beers or whatever. And you get to watch Highlight, which I had no clue what the game was about, but you get to yell and scream when balls hit the wall, and you have cheap food. So anyways, you might want to visit that sometime. It's still there.
Is it still there? I didn't realize any Highlight places. I used to do that down in South Florida when I was growing up. But yeah.
I grew up in Sunrise, South Florida. I know we're getting off topic here. Maybe we should, after we hit stop recording, we'll catch up. Anyways, fellow deal makers, Rhett, you stay on the line. We're going to chat South Florida stuff.
Okay.
Fellow deal makers, as always, reach out to our guests. Say thank you for being on the show, sharing your information. If you have a deal that they may be interested in. Always, you could reach out to them directly. Their contact information will be in the show notes, or you could ping me and say, hey, man, will you connect me with Rhett? I've got a deal, and I'll make the connection there. That's the purpose and mission of the show, is to connect deals and deal makers, get deal flow flowing. If you have something that you would like to talk about it on the show, maybe a deal that you're working on, head on over to thedealscout.com. Fill out a quick form, get you on the show next. Till then, talk to you all next episode.